Sure. Thank you so much to the press who has joined us. I can't see any of you. Will we be able to see them, Hannah?
Yeah, when they start talking, they should show up.
Okay. All right. So thank you for joining us. We are having these weekly press availabilities, as you know, and the reason for that is so that myself and the rest of other Democrats can make ourselves available to the press and have good dialogue, but also so that we can make ourselves available to the public, which we do through the recordings and all of the work that you do. It's really important to Democrats to have transparency. And so today we'll talk about public education and funding in the governor's budget, as well as some specific policies. We have with us today Vice Chair of the House Education Committee, Melissa Romano, and then also we have a member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Education, Representative Connie Keel. But before we go any further, could press members please introduce themselves?
Kayla Spaller with the Daily Montanan.
Alex Sackerson with Montana Free Press.
I'm Shaylee Rager with Montana Public Radio.
Nicole Gerton with Lee, Montana.
And I think we just have MPAN, Mary, so I think that's it.
Okay, all right, thank you. So again, thank you for joining us. I so appreciate your interest in the work that we're doing. Like I said, we'll talk about public education, and I'm vice chair of the Appropriations Committee. Public education is one of the values of Democrats. With public education, we can ensure that better quality of life for our children, as well as for families. What we have right now is a crisis. It's a crisis in public education. The governor's budget is a start, but it doesn't fix the problem. What he is proposing is a solution that is a 10-foot rope for a 50-foot hole. We need jobs and we need a stronger economy, and that comes with an educated workforce. So with that, I am going to back out and let the experts in this area talk about some proposals that the Democrats have for the upcoming session. And I thought I don't care where we start, either Representative Romano or Keel.
Well, I think we were planning that I would go ahead first. Is that all right, Representative Romano? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, happy holidays, everybody. It's good to see your faces. Thank you for being here today and for giving us this time. We really appreciate to be part of the message and the solution. So thank you, Representative Cafaro, for kicking us off. So as you all know, well, maybe not, but I'll state it, that during the 68th session and in the beginning of the interim, there was a lot of kicking the can down the road about our lagging school funding system. And, you know, what we kept hearing up to this point was that the decennial study, which is scheduled for the interim after this session, would address Montana school funding and take care of all the problems. Even though Montana has been trailing the national average in funding way before COVID and the ESSER money influx. But then as the headlines, and many of them came from your papers, across the state in, you know, later midway through the interim and in spring of 2024 for sure, started really creating the awareness around the multi-million-dollar shortfalls that districts were experiencing, and it caught everyone's attention. And so from that, the STARS Act has been brought forward. Now that stands for Student and Teacher Achievement for Results and Success, was brought to the Education Interim Budget Committee, which I'm a member of. And it has, been discussed across the state for the last few months. But as you probably know, it's still in a very preliminary form that would build into the funding formula a method to increase teacher salaries across the state. And, I do believe it's a start in the right direction. We're paying attention and there's something in the works. But I am looking forward, as the rest of us are, to actually seeing the bill draft. And I'm going to remain optimistic with some tweaks that it can get us heading towards more funding for our Montana schools. There are many discussions, though, around how the inflation factor fits in, variation in the district's current base and actual teacher salaries. Our demographics across the state are changing as we speak. So how that's going to bring all this together with the STARS Act is hopeful, but there's a lot of work to do yet. And I would say my biggest concern with how STARS is structured is that it's focused on the least paid teachers and not the mid or late career teachers. So it's raising the floor without raising the walls or the ceiling. So right now we know year 5 is the make or break point for teachers staying or leaving in the profession. Not all of them stuck around for 20 years like I did. And Representative Romano's been going towards that time too. Again, I'm hopeful. And, this bill has good possibilities, devil's in the details. I would suggest it needs a ton more work, and Democrats, including myself and some of the, we've gotten a lot of new members in our delegation, and a lot of these folks really understand how important it is, and they actually understand how funding our schools happens. So I think we can be a good team and a good asset to work together across the aisle. So one thing I wanted to talk about is that we will very soon see a bill that has been discussed in EIBC around the makeup of the Decennial Commission, who will be representing us on the commission, and some funding for it, and maybe even some altering of purpose and scope. So just to refresh you all, I think most of you know what the decennial study probably is, but it's mandated in statute to be every 5th interim to relook the funding in the state. So it's a good thing that we do that. We just need to make sure we do the right work. Currently, the Senate President and the House Majority Leader appoint the legislative members. And I believe in the bill that we will be seeing soon around this, that it will probably attempt to be more specific about who from leadership and with what kind of backgrounds will serve on the commission. So be watching for that. So I do think it's going to be a pivotal point in our state's funding of education when this decennial study meets, and how it moves forward to the 70th legislative session. And so what happens with the STARS Act will be a real crucial part of that. And bills that we are carrying as Democrats, bringing forward the issues that, of course, we'd hope that they could get dealt with right now, but if not, laying some of the groundwork for the decennial study. And one example that I'll share with you is I'm carrying a bill that would establish funding directly to schools based on their ELL, which is English language learners population. This population in our schools has expanded greatly through the last 10, 15 years. And we are the only state that does not fund our districts on a per student basis for English language learners. Our districts rely solely on Title III funding, which is barely a drop in the bucket. So moving forward, we hope to talk about that this session and make sure it's addressed in the decennial commission study. So probably could go on for a lot longer, but I think it's time to turn this over to Representative Romano, who's waiting. And she's going to talk to us about the Democrat education priorities and how all this ties together. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Representative Keough. Hello, welcome to everyone. Happy holidays. I apologize. I don't know why my video wants to be cutting in and out with the brightness. I don't know. It's ready to be on a holiday break, maybe. So I want to talk to us a little bit about some of the Democratic priorities and some of the bills that you're going to see coming up in the session. We've kind of lumped them. You're going to see lots of education bills, but in terms of our priorities, we have kind of three really big bucket areas. And those buckets are strengthening K-12 funding, which Connie talked a little bit about. Supporting students and teachers would be the second bucket. And then the third bucket is all about really finding and keeping our educators. Every business owner, every good business owner knows that retention or recruitment is important, but retention is just as important. And so we're going to see some bills around that. And to the best of my ability, I'm going to tell you about some bills and who likely will be carrying them. And as you probably know, like the devil's in the details and bills are still changing. And I'll do my best to give you kind of a broad overview. But I won't know specifics, and so you'll just have to reach out to the carrier for really specifics. You're going to see probably some bills revolving around inflation, and that's been talked about, that there's a 3% cap traditionally, and we don't tend to go above that cap, which over time has really resulted in chronic underfunding of schools. And if we had just kept up with inflation, that'd be one thing, but we haven't. And so we're on this just downward spiral of schools continuing to be underfunded. And so you'll see some bills related to that. In Helena, Representative Luke Miskevich will have a couple of different bills around inflation and working with that. I'm going to carry a bill to fund sixth grade students who are attending at a middle school setting at a secondary level. In Montana right now, 90% of our students attend public schools, and of that 90%, 98% of sixth graders are served in a middle school setting. And so the vast majority are attending middle school as a sixth grader in a middle school setting, and they're funded at an elementary level. And so we want to see that those students receive opportunities and that our middle schools can continue to provide excellent educational opportunities for kids. And we don't want to keep seeing headlines that middle schools have to cut or that they're reverting back to elementary models. In terms of supporting our students, you're going to see a lot of bills because we really want to empower our students, because we know that today's youth are tomorrow's workforce. And so we want our students to be able to be in the workforce and be in a workforce that's resilient and innovative and prepared to tackle all of the challenges of the future that we don't even really know exist yet. And so Representative Keough, she's got a bill, and she can probably, if you have questions about it, she can probably give you more answers about it, but she's got a bill about lottery proceeds being dedicated to education funding. I'll be running a bill about establishing a school mental health promotion pilot program because mental health is just as important as academics, and we know that our educators are facing mental health challenges with students in the classroom every day. And the unique part about my bill is that it really brings in student voice. I think we have a lot of top-down decisions being made by lots of experts, doctors, teachers, etc. But I think one of the voices that is missing is student voice. And so this is a bill that's aimed at having students be involved in what how they want to help shape the culture of their school and what mental health things would help them feel involved and engaged in their school. Related to finding and keeping educators, I also have a bill revolved around mentorship, and I'm calling it the Montana's BEST program. And every good educator loves a great acronym. So BEST stands for Bolstering Educator Support and Training. And we just know there's so much research that talks about mentorship as a really valuable tool for retaining teachers. And so this truly is a retention bill. Representative Keough and I were on a group of lawmakers who went and visited Bishop Carroll over the interim. And, one of the big takeaways that we all walked away with when we visited that school was how important mentorship was. And those teachers at that school talked about the role of mentorship and how supported they felt in implementing a unique model of education. And so I'm really hopeful about that bill. It's a way to have sustainable professional development. So, and then Representative Eric Matthews he's going to be carrying a teacher bill of rights. And that's really coming from just this unprecedented times where teachers have really been sort of attacked, and he feels a need, like he wants to have teachers protected, especially from bad actors. And yeah, I don't know a ton about what will be on his bill, but I'm eager to learn more about it. And then I think we'll see some bills around, I believe Representative Running Wolf has a bill about extending the Grow Your Own grant program. Again, because we really, as Representative Cafaro said, schools are struggling right now. We need to keep teachers. We need to find teachers. We need to fund education. And so you're going to see lots of bills from Democrats that have those big three priorities time and time again. And with that, I don't know if we can answer questions. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add on to that, Mary.
No. Did great. If there are questions, please feel free.
All right, Kayla, you want to take the first one?
Good morning. Thank you for doing this. Is the STARS Act similar to the TEACH Act?
It's the TEACH Act on steroids, is what they keep saying. But no, it's really not. And Melissa, do you want to dive deeper? Do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I would say no, it's not. And I think that'll be really, I think that's important moving forward, is that it really isn't. There were lots of problems with the TEACH Act. There were many schools that couldn't, they just couldn't utilize the TEACH Act, and it wasn't as successful, I think, as people had hoped it would be. I think the STARS Act, like Representative Keough said, I think it's a good start. I'm interested to see the actual bill language and work with everyone to make sure that it's great. But it really there's other things in the STARS Act besides just increasing beginning teacher salary. There's some CTE things in there. There's some, requirements or some dual credit and AP things. There's a whole, I think there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 different things. And again, I don't know them all off the top of my head. I'm eager to see the language of the bill. But I think it's pretty different than the Teach Act, and probably like would be just something separate.
Yeah, exactly. I
Thank
think the only similarity is that it's going to beginning teachers. The other thing that I'm really interested in the STARS Act is, and they don't have any details about it yet, but is somehow it is something about a stipend for schools to help with housing for school districts. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds.
Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I was curious. Connie, Alex with Free Press.
I
um, either, I mean, Connie, Melissa, like whoever might have some read on this, but I'm kind of curious. I mean, since like the latest version of STARS was talking about that that being a new funding component within base, and I'm really curious how you're thinking about these new approaches to or these proposals around enhancing teacher pay and the conversations around property tax relief. I'm kind of curious how you're hoping to make sure that the Democrats help navigate districts still being able to draw down all this funding, so that the legislature is basically not just making a bunch of funding available that districts then can't really access fully,
Right.
because it's harder for them to pass local levies or to, draw down the local money that they need without overburdening the property taxpayer. This is all such a
I know.
formula, but I'm kind of curious, like how that's entering your thought process when you're looking at both these issues of like education funding and like the property tax level.
Right. Well, it's frightening, to be honest, and it's going to be a delicate balance. I believe we can do it. I believe if we get our property tax situation settled and make sure we're not shifting so much of the burden on our property owners, that there's got to be a solution. And we're there to work side by side with all the education leaders to make sure that we can do it. I can't tell you exactly how it's going to happen now, but we're not going to throw one under the bus so that we have the other. Schools have to be funded, and we need property tax relief. Somebody's got to pay the bill. Mary, could you add to that? It's a hard question, Alex's.
Well, Alex, is your question in general, how will we fund schools and provide property tax relief?
Yeah, more how can the legislature, or what's your thinking on how the legislature can enhance teacher pay without making it sort of a standalone incentive like the Teach Act was, without kind of shifting some of that burden more onto the property taxpayers. So I'm kind of like wondering that, because it's so much of this is tied up in the funding formula and like 80% versus max. And yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like how you see the legislature like potentially balancing those two components, that property tax relief and education funding.
Well, I'm not an expert on education funding, but what I will say is that there's plenty of money in the budget. The budget is a matter of priorities. It expresses our values, and Democrats value public education. I don't think we have an appetite to give a income tax break to the richest millionaires and billionaires in the state that when it's all said and done will cost our state $250 million. That's not our priority. Those are not good values. Our values are public education, supporting the workforce, supporting the overall economy with good training, good jobs. I mean, in Helena alone, we had a number of teachers laid off. That's cutting jobs. We believe in making jobs, not cutting out jobs. And then you talk about the property tax. Again, that's not my area of expertise, but I thought it was really good on the last press avail when Representative Thane and Representative Carlin talked about rebalancing property taxes. So we can fund public education, have a good formula, and give property tax relief that targets those most in need or working class folks, not rich people, in part by rebalancing the property tax classes. And I say all that, please believe me, education funding and the formula and tax policy is not my area of expertise.
After saying that, Mary, I have a follow-up question actually, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. I was going to ask a very similar question to Alex's. I guess I'm wondering if it would be possible if, say, some, very fiscally conservative Republicans were looking at property tax relief and they wanted to look at the 95 mills. Is that something they could do to try to lower the mills or lower that tax? I don't know. Is that something they could do?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Answer it.
I can jump in, and I think that I mean they could. The answer is they could, but I think that like that's not something that we would want to do. Like that's not something that I think we would want to protect the 95 mills.
For sure.
Mhm.
I have a question kind of related to the STARS Act again. How are Democrats weighing the critique from MFPE that it intervenes in what unions negotiate at a local level?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nicole. I think, there's still a lot to be seen with the STARS Act since we haven't seen the legislation. There are, some of us who have had conversations with other legislators about the STARS Act. Ultimately, we want to find teachers and keep teachers. And so we want to raise beginning teacher salary, and we want our middle and our higher end teachers, our teachers who have been experts and who have been in the field for a long time, we want them to be rewarded as well. Every teacher is an expert in their field. They know what they're doing, and we want them to be paid well. So we have still yet to see the legislation. So to be determined.
Thank you.
Are there
All
other
right.
questions?
Yeah, any other questions for this group?
Yeah, I had a question unrelated to stars.
Yay.
Hey.
Yeah, I just want to get that out of my head for a minute over the holiday. So on revisiting something that had come up and passed last session, I've had a few sources reach out with some concerns around the changes that the parental rights bill that passed last session may have unintentionally had on the youth risk behavior survey and participation in that. And I wondered if that's anything that's on y'all's radar, and if there's like kind of any discussion about kind of revisiting maybe other unintended consequences on the education front from last session that you're kind of like hoping to come back around to and revisit and fix up.
Yeah, not me. I haven't heard.
Yeah, I
anything.
haven't heard anything specific to that, Alex. Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. I haven't heard specifics about it.
But we're writing it down, right,
Yep.
Melissa?
Yes, I saw Connie writing it down.
Well, and then yeah, I mean, my like follow up more broadly was just like anything that's kind of a carryover from last session that you're hoping to revisit. I know there were a whole slate of education bills that passed last session, and I'm just curious on this issue if there's anything from last session that you're going, we need to dive back into this and like tweak it, fix it, address some of the, concerns that have come up in the interim. Is there anything that kind of springs to mind as far as like, ground that needs to be revisited
Do you have anything, Connie?
Well, I don't plan to do anything around this, but there has been a lot of concern and extra work around the bill on how we're doing out of district placements and the tuition part with that. I've got a lot of notes, but I'm not sure what to do with it all at this point. But with my new district, with redistricting, I go out towards Condon now. And so I have some of those really tiny schools, and there's a lot of back and forth of in and out of districts, depending on where parents work and what have you. It's caused a lot of secretarial administrative burden, if nothing else. And I don't know what the ultimate goal is with
Yeah,
that.
and Alex, I'll add, yeah, Representative Keogh's not wrong, and I think you'll see a couple different bill drafts from several different legislators on that. Like that's definitely an issue that's come up around the state. So I think I've heard of at least 2 or 3 legislators interested in trying to, have some sort of remedy on the open enrollment. The other thing, a positive that I think is you'll see, because it's gonna be me, but I'm gonna add on to the early literacy intervention bill and bring numeracy. So that was talked quite a bit about in the interim, as well as early numeracy, and so I'm gonna bring that and just call it intervention and bring numeracy into the fold as well. And I think there's some other legislators who are interested in that as well.
I have a question on that briefly. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious if you guys have been getting, I'm sure you've been watching that program, the literacy program. It went into effect this last year, right? Was the first year. I'm curious if there's been any skepticism from the Republican side, if you guys feel like the program is in a good place going forward, if you're worried about any other changes that might be made or pushing for. It was just such a big policy when it passed last time.
Yeah, I personally have not heard any skepticism. Yeah, I've heard lots of positive comments from legislators.
Yeah, me too. The biggest problem with it is the startup. And again, back to my little districts, they don't have money socked away to start a new program, waiting for the A and B money to come in, and hiring qualified instructors and getting them to move to Condon, Montana, and places like that. So I wish that there were some more support and funding available with that. And the Jumpstart part of it didn't get going as good as it could have. So hopefully this next summer that we'll see more Jumpstart programs. But I think everyone's really vested in it, and it's an amazing piece of legislation.
Yeah, during Legislative Orientation Week, Helena hosted some curriculum directors and from across the state and along the line of science of reading mostly, but there were several legislators, and Representative Keogh and I were both there, and Representative Barker, Representative Rexton, can't remember who else, but several people who were there, and the early intervention, the literacy bill, that was talked about with, and they all had lovely things to say. So, yeah.
I was curious about,
go ahead.
I was curious about the charter school bill, the popular one that's resulted in so many more schools, and if there were any needed tweaks to that, and the funding piece in particular was what I was curious about.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think, yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think maybe the Board of Public Ed was going to ask for maybe a change in the timeline for reviewing because it was just so condensed, like it was a very quick turnaround. And I don't know about funding. Connie may know more.
Well, if everyone was surprised at the
Yeah.
number of of applications, and so yeah, I think they were thinking maybe there'd be 3 or 4, and what was it, 20?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's alive and well and carrying on, and I I don't see any changes coming. They have narrowed down the scope of the application process. That was really difficult for them because it was really long and they had so many. So they've done some of that, but I think the period's open now for going forward. So all in all, it's a great program and some good things are happening there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I had, if you're done with questions, I had something, are you finished with questions to the press? Yeah, I had something I want to close with, and it's personal. So I'll tell you the role that public ed has played in my life. My Irish grandma was a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in Idaho, and she taught her own kids. She taught her youngest sister, relatives. So that's where I come from. And I have a sister who's a school teacher. And then on my Italian side, I was raised in an immigrant neighborhood in Whitefish called Little Italy. And one of the reasons that my family came to our country was because of our public ed system and the opportunity. So that's really important to understand. And I remember one day I was playing in the front yard with my brothers, and little Frank, we called him, he was 5 foot tall. He had pop bottle glasses and he was headed off like in a hurry. I said, "Hey, little Frank, where are you going in such a hurry?" And he said, "Going to vote for the kids, going to vote for the kids." My family so valued public education beginning to end. And again, one of the big reasons the Italians came over here is because of our country's public education system. And then last, as an adult, when I went through a divorce and my kids were struggling, who was there for them? Their teachers. It's just so important to recognize the value of public education in all these different areas. Opportunity, teachers are there for their students, and the history of public ed in my family, going back to the one-room schoolhouse. And with that, I hope everybody has a good holiday. We'll see you after the holidays.
Okay. Thanks,
you.
everyone. Let us
Thanks,
know if
everyone.
you have any
Thanks for
questions.
doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.